The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, REL-MAR McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and you're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on Simul TV. If you'd like to find out about the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV, visit simultv.com, and in the search engine, type in X Zone, and away you go. My guest this hour is Dr. Don K. Preston. He's the president of the Preterist Research Institute, a nonprofit institute dedicated to the positive proclamation of the good news that we are not in the last days and the world is not about to end. Joining me now is my good friend, Dr. Don K. Preston from Oklahoma. Hey, Don, welcome back.
Oh, thank you much, Rod. It's always good to be with you. It's always an honor and a pleasure.
Don, so many people out there, you and I have talked many times about the end days and people who, just are out bent to just destroy what people believe in Christianity and Jesus and God. Is it my imagination, or is it getting worse as society grows?
Actually, Rod, I don't think it's getting worse, to be honest about it. I mean, we hear more about it because we obviously are living in the age of social media.
Right.
All we have to do is click on the computer, and we are exposed to people from literally around the world that, 50 years ago, that we would never have even heard about were it not for the proliferation of computerized our computerized world.
Right.
It's literally. Had you told me, and if I can share a real quick anecdote.
Sure, please. Right. Yeah.
When I was in high school, I'll never forget. We had one of what they call the assembly. It had to be there.
Yeah.
They had some young people there from AT&T. They were talking all about computers. Now, this was in 1967, 68. And these young people were saying, young people, if you want to get wealthy, go to college, get into computers. This is going to be the greatest change in all of the world. You're not going to believe. Oh, and they had this humongous computer set up on the floor, the gym floor. And you can imagine how slow it was. You could just imagine how archaic it was by today's standards. And to show you how brilliant I was, after their presentation, they said, if you want an opportunity to get rich, get into computers. And I turned to my buddy sitting next to me and went, yeah, right, sure. It's the craziest thing I ever heard of.
Yeah.
So I'm not wealthy today because I did not invest in computer technology. But again, that just shows you how radically our world has changed. In 1968, I would have had no knowledge whatsoever of a fellow who sent me, for instance, an email Let's see, this is the 7th. Day before yesterday, this fellow named Richard Brown, a.k.a. Jesus Christ, is currently scheduled for trial on February 10th or 17th, 2019. And it's going to be held in Cumming, Georgia. It's going to be, according to Mr. Brown himself, the greatest trial in history. And on this email goes, and I'm going, are you absolutely out of your mind? Well, it's a rhetorical question. Obviously, he is out of his mind. It's just like the fella in the Philippines that has been duping people for, 15, 20 years now, telling them that he's Jesus. Just like the guru in India. Several of them, actually, in India, claiming that they are the true Messiah. We would have never known that were it not for the internet and social media. So again, I really honestly don't think that we have that much of a proliferation of weirdos. We can go back in history. If you just study your history, you will find very, very quickly that beginning in the late 1st century, you had all sorts of wackos running around the land of Israel. You had all sorts of people in the Roman Empire who were claiming to be the great prophet of God and this and that and the other. And we know about them because of historians who deemed it interesting or enough or whatever to write it down. But you can be certain, you can be absolutely certain, if they took the time to mention 1 or 2 or 3, that there were 100 of them.
My goodness. So this is nothing new. This has been happening throughout history.
Even in the Christian religion, it has been true. That there was an author by the name of Gummerlock who chronicled the false teachers, the false prophets that have appeared in the history of the Christian church, beginning in the late, or I should say the very, very early 2nd century. A guy named Montanus. He claimed to be a prophet of God. He gathered people around him. He said that he was the true prophet, and he had some women who followed him. They were God's prophetesses, and he said that in the very, very, very near future, that the, quote, New Jerusalem was going to descend from heaven. It was going to be 1,400 miles square, and the righteous would go to live in that New Jerusalem or live on the replenished earth. So, I mean, it doesn't take much study to know and to see, to realize that history is replete with real strange people.
You know, Don, it's a wonder that the real Messiah was recognized then.
You raise a great point. You really do raise a great point, Rob. And as a matter of fact, I believe that the proliferation of false messiahs in the 1st century was one of the detractions from people recognizing Jesus for who he was. Now, he stood out like a sore thumb in many ways. And we could enumerate many. Number one, he performed genuine miracles that they could not do, that when they tried to do them, they failed. And in many instances, they even humbled themselves before Christ and before his apostles who were able to do the genuine miracles. But number two, Jesus was not a political anarchist. You know, in the book of Acts in the New Testament, what we call the New Testament, we are told about 2 guys, Judas and Theudas, that had appeared before Jesus. And they had claimed to be the Messiah. They had claimed that the second Exodus was about to take place and that they were going to lead the children of Israel back to glory. They're going to restore the nation of Israel. They're going to whip the Romans. And you see, that's what characterized 99.9% of all would-be messiahs in the 1st century and distinguished Jesus from them. I mean, here is Jesus standing before Pilate. Pilate already has two guys hanging on a cross just outside the city gates. And according to Mark chapter 15 and verse 3, they were insurrectionists. In other words, they were false messiahs. They were people who wanted to whip the Romans, incite riots, incite strife and civil war to whip the Romans. Well, Pilate, as he was really prone to do, I mean, Pilate didn't put up with any kind of that kind of stuff. Pilate killed literally thousands of people on the flimsiest of excuses, in the belief, in the paranoid belief that they were trying to lead insurrections against Rome. Now, mind you, that's his obligation to protect Rome,
Right.
to protect what was known as the Pax Romana. But here comes Jesus, and he's standing before Pilate. Are you the king of the Jews? Well, I am, Jesus said. And, well, okay, if you're the king of the Jews, then what about this and what about that? And Jesus said, look, let me finish it very, very quickly. I'm sorry. Jesus said, I didn't come to fight Rome. I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Yeah.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight.
All right, Don, we're going to have to hold it here. I have to take this hard break. Exonation Dr. Don K. Preston is my special guest. www.bibleprophecy.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And welcome back. This is the Excellent I am Rob McConnell. My guest this hour is Dr. Don K. Preston, www.bibleprophecy.com. Don, from what I see on television, because I really, beyond what people may think, I'm not that old. I wasn't there at the time of, when Pontius Pilate was questioning Jesus Christ. It seems, from what I've seen on every one of the films, documentaries about Christ, is that I got the impression that Pontius Pilate really did not want to crucify Christ.
No, that's exactly correct. Pilate, it's a marvelous story, and I would encourage everyone to get their Bibles out and to read all of the parallel accounts in what we call the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Pilate's own wife came to him as the trial is going on. Now, mind you, this is something unusual. Women didn't normally interfere in judicial affairs.
I've always found that very interesting.
Yeah, and yet she came to him during the trial, and she said, "You, you really need to not do anything with this guy. I had a dream.
Right.
You really, really need to leave this guy alone." And almost immediately, here Pilate brings a bowl of water, washes his hands, and says, I find no fault with this man. This man's guilt is on your shoulders. I don't want anything to do with this guy. And so it's really, as I said, it's really quite a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
When you read the entire story of the trial of Jesus, here in America, those of us who have followed the impeachment trial of President Trump.
Yes, I followed it very closely myself.
I suspected that you did, but those of us who felt like that was a kangaroo court can see a tremendous amount of parallels.
Yes.
With the trial of Jesus. They were not going to let him go, no matter what. When Pilate said, well, okay, at this time of the year, which is during the Feast of the Passover, it's traditional for me to release a prisoner to you. Well, they had a guy named Barabbas, who, by the way, was an insurrectionist. He was a rabble-rouser. He was a man who was fighting Rome, or wanted to fight Rome. So he said, do I turn loose Barabbas, who is a known killer, who is a known rabble-rouser? this is not a nice person here? Or do I turn loose Jesus, who says he's your king and with whom I find no fault? Turn loose Barabbas. He's a great guy. We want Barabbas. Well, that can be viewed as
Don, are you there? Oops.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, Don. We lost you there for a few seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
What I was doing, I was saying that the Jews' desire and willingness to have Barabbas released to them was almost prophetic, because what they were saying is, we would prefer a man who is a political rabble-rouser, a militaristic rabble-rouser who's willing to go kill the Romans, over this man who went about doing good, healing the sick, giving sight to the blind, healing lepers, even raising the dead. Now just think about that. How ironic is it? So they got Barabbas, and in 37 years, that kind of man, the kind of man of Barabbas, led them to revolt against Rome, and as a consequence of it, the Jews suffered the greatest destruction, the greatest defeat, the worst loss of life in their entire history up to that point.
So
it's ironic, to say the least.
So if we're using this analogy, would Congressman Schiff be... who would Congressman Schiff be in this entire scenario?
He would be the chief priest.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I mean, to tell you, don't even get me started on that. That's just such a sad debacle.
Well, you know what I can't understand, Don, and you know, here you've got a president who's done what he said he was going to do. You've got a president who was marked as a marked man even before he was sworn in.
Yes. The
Democrats said they were going to impeach him. Now, when it comes to this whole Ukraine thing, well, what the hell was Joe Biden's son doing getting paid for a position he knew nothing about in the millions of dollars? If that isn't kickback, or I don't know what it is. So I can understand why President Trump wanted an investigation.
I've listened to the transcript myself, to that phone call, seen the transcript.
Right.
And in my opinion, and I will say this, Rob, excuse me.
No problem.
I've been a registered Democrat for over 40 years. I will never vote Democratic again because of the high-handed, illegitimate, dishonest, corrupt actions of the Democratic Party during this entire fiasco. And, oh, by the way, right here in my little county of Carter County, Oklahoma, just over the last 2 months, this was reported in the newspaper yesterday, over 1,000 people have changed their affiliation from Democrat to Republican.
My goodness.
Now, that's in Oklahoma, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is a trend that is going to be carried out across the nation, then my goodness gracious, the Democratic Party is in massive trouble, and I hope that that's true. They're not concerned at all, and we're not talking about the trial of Jesus here, but the Democratic Party has shown they're not concerned about foreign policy. They're not concerned about the economy. They're not concerned with health care. They're not concerned about anything except removing Donald Trump from the presidency. It is exactly like you said.
Yeah.
They said before he was ever sworn in, they were going to impeach him.
Yes.
Now, if that's not political bias, if that's not unfairness, I don't know what is.
What was your thought when you saw Nancy Pelosi rip up President Trump's speech behind him?
I nearly yelled at the screen, "Impeach her."
I agree.
Well, not only for that. I mean, that's only one of many insults, lack of respect for the presidency. And look, Mr. Trump has done and said an awful lot of things with which as a Christian, I don't agree with. I do
can
not
understand
appreciate.
that. Yeah.
I don't appreciate his language very often. And I have not appreciated some of the things that he admitted to doing prior even to his candidacy. So I don't give him, a blank check, as it were.
Sure.
But at the same time, when the man said, here's what I'm going to do as a president. I'm going to give you tax breaks. I'm going to change health care. I'm going to restore the military. I'm going to get people off of welfare. You could just make a list.
Yeah.
A really, really long list of things that he said he was going to do, and he's done every single thing he said he was going to do. And so you don't have to like the guy personally. And again, to be real and blunt about it, I'm not crazy about him as a person. But as the president, he has certainly fulfilled his word. And if nothing else, although there is plenty else, he has restored the honor of the American military around the world.
Yes, he has.
The respect for the American military around the world. And one of the things that he said in his speech the other night was that he has sent a message loud and clear throughout the entire world. It's a message that used to be well understood, but thanks to men like Barack Obama, it got lost. It got abused.
Mm-hmm.
But Mr. Trump said, we sent a very, very powerful message when we killed Mr. Soleimani. You kill an American, you are going to die.
I was going to ask you if that strike on the Iranian general could be interpreted that we are, in fact, in the last days.
Well, it's really funny. My best friend, William Bell, who is from Memphis, Tennessee, William and I were talking about that immediately after it happened because, as you well know, Rob, it doesn't take much of anything to get the so-called prophecy experts all up in the air.
Yeah.
This is it. Well, on Facebook, the very day after Soleimani was killed, and anybody that really doesn't believe that needed to be done at some point, then you really have no respect for human life. This was a bloodthirsty butcher. And all of that aside, my friend and I were talking on the phone. And I said, what do you want to bet that the prophecy pundits in dispensationalism are going to be all over this? And he said, oh, they are. So again, I guess it was the day after that.
Right.
I'm on Facebook. And there's this guy. He is a dispensationalist, a Zionist. And he was saying, President Trump doesn't know what he's done. Syria is Gog and Magog. He has unleashed the last days. This is proof positive we are in the last days.
All right, speaking about last days, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. We're going to have a bit of a cliffhanger here, Exo Nation. Dr. Don K. Preston is my special guest. And for more information about Don and the great work he does, visit www.bibleprophecy.com. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll be back after the news. Don't go away. Exonation, Dr. Don K. Preston is our guest. www.bibleprophecy.com is his website. And Don, you and I were talking about the strike on the Iranian general and how some people seem to spin a conspiracy or they just have nothing better to do with their time. And, they start with that this is a sign of the end times. How can people listening differentiate between hype and reality when it comes to the internet, because there's more crap in the internet than there is anything else.
That's an understatement
Yeah.
for sure. Yes, absolutely. Well, the Bible is a book that tells us. I have a television program every Friday morning at 9:30 on what they call the Now TV network. And I was pointing out in a program that will air in a couple of weeks, I was pointing out the Bible and Christianity is a very distinctive Christianity in regard and in comparison to the other religions of the world. Jesus said, if I do not do the works which my Father has given me, do not believe me. Do not believe me for my words, believe me for my works.
Yes.
Now, that's one of the most remarkable challenges. I'll never forget, several years ago, I was having a formal public debate with a dispensational fellow, and he was abusing the scripture, coming, going, upside down, and everything. And I said, you're violating the proper rules of exegesis and good hermeneutic. Now, exegesis, folks, is drawing out of a text what is in the text. Eisegesis is reading into the text what is not in the text. And it's really that simple. And Jesus issues a challenge to us, even a challenge that resounds right down to the present day. We examine his life. Here's one of the primary tests. Jesus said, the Son of Man, which was his favorite designation for himself, will go to Jerusalem, there be betrayed, crucified, buried, and raised the third day. Now, let's face it. Rob, if you and I were listening to that, even as his good friends, we would go say, whoa. Hang on. What in the world are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
We would think our good friend had lost his mind. And it'd be perfectly legitimately natural for us to think that. So Jesus had to say that over and over, pardon me, again to his own disciples. But guess what? He went to Jerusalem, he was betrayed, he was crucified, he was buried, and on the third day, his body was gone. And he appeared to his apostles. He appeared to over 500 people at one time.
Yeah.
To prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he really was alive. So Paul would express it like this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. If Christ is not risen, in other words, if Jesus didn't keep his word, our faith is in vain. And so I say to all of those people who are out there and who say, well, look at this and look at that, blah, blah, blah. No, let's look at the biblical record, and let's not read it through the prism of modern day Grecian worldview. Let's view it through the prism of the ancient Near East, or to put it another way, through the Hebraic worldview, through the prism of ancient Israelite literature. Now, the great tragedy here, Rob, is I certainly wasn't raised being familiar with ancient Hebraic literature. I thought you pick up the Bible, it's in English, you read it, you understand it, there you go. Bible says what it means what it says.
Right, exactly.
And that sounds great. It sounds simple, but in reality, it is simplistic.
Ooh.
Because the ancient Hebrews did not think and they did not write like we today in the Western world, including Canada, think and write.
Well, that makes sense, Don, because when you look at the times when the Bible was written, they weren't as savvy as we are. They did not know about the sciences. They did not know about physics. They did not know about astronomy. So what they wrote was what they knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Furthermore, when they were extremely, may I use the term, earthbound?
Definitely.
What I mean by that, they got their identity from the dirt. They were primarily agricultural, and the way they expressed themselves, the thing that they believed that was the most sure, the most solid, the most everlasting, was the physical creation. The ancient Jews didn't have a concept of the earth passing away, in spite of what some scholars today claim. Now, some of the later intertestamental writers certainly expressed that, but the biblical writers, when they wanted to express life-changing events. They expressed it as if it was heaven and earth passing away. However, when you look at the language and you look, I produce videos 5 days a week on YouTube. You can look it up, DonkPreston.com, called Morning Musings. And I've been going through the language of the Old Testament, which is the language of Jesus in the New Testament, by the way, and showing that in the Old Testament, many, many, many times, it just says that God came out of heaven. He destroyed heaven and earth. He came with flaming fire. He came with a shout. He came with a hailstone. He came with this. He came with that. And yet not one time did he ever literally, visibly, and bodily come out of heaven. He sure didn't destroy literal, physical heaven and earth over and over and over and over again. I think that statement will stand the test. So,
yeah.
You know, when we go to the Bible and we see that when they wanted to express life-changing events, I would urge the audience, get your Bible out and read Psalms 18. Now, here's the context real quickly. Saul was chasing David all over the countryside to kill him because the prophet Samuel had told Saul, guess what? David's going to become king and you're going to forfeit the kingdom. Well, Saul wasn't just overly thrilled with that, so he starts trying to kill David every opportunity that he has. So Psalms 18 is David's recounting. It's not prose, it's hyperbolic language, exaggerated language. Here is David, and he says, I cried to the Lord in my despair. He heard me from the heavens, and fire came out from his nostrils. The mountains were melted under his breath. He came down, and the mountains melted. The foundations of the seas were exposed. Now, you can read in the book of 2 Samuel the entire account of Saul chasing David. You will not find that any of that ever literally, physically happened. But that's the way they express themselves.
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically, they express themselves in word pictures, mental images,
yeah.
Not in hard, fast literalism. That's an important lesson for us to learn today. So when we find people today saying, oh, look, Gog and Magog, that's got to be Syria. Well, in the first place, historically, that's not even accurate. Those terms, Gog and Magog, are some of the most ambiguous terms, that are to be found. People have identified Gog and Magog as Russia and China or whoever, and what have you. So when this gentleman on Facebook the other day said, oh, Syria is Gog and Magog, I'm going, and where did you determine that as a fact? And we have to learn, Rob, to be students of the Bible that honors audience relevance. Well, what in the world is audience relevance? As I was sharing with a bunch of folks on Facebook just the other day, it is the obligation of the biblical reader and exegete, the person who's going to draw out from the scriptures what is in the scriptures and not read into it. It is our obligation to determine what did it mean to the original audience first and foremost. We're not supposed to, never were supposed to read the Bible and say, well, that's speaking directly to me. Now, might it apply to us? Well, the eternal character of God, because God always hates sin. So when God says, thou shalt not lie or steal or murder or covet, guess what? Yeah, that's applicable at any point of life or any point of time, because God never changes in regard to his character. But I had one guy on Facebook the other day tell me, and openly ridiculing the idea of audience relevance. And he says, if audience relevance is true, then I guess we don't have to love our neighbor anymore, or do not lie one to another, etc. That doesn't apply to us. And I said, well, here's the problem. You are taking moral mandates that spring from the eternal, unchanging character of God,
Right.
and you're ignoring the fact.
All right. Apparently, we've had another drop with our guest this
well,
hour.
evidently
Don,
the-
stand by, please, Don. We've got to go into our commercial break. We lost you there for a few seconds.
Okay.
But when we come back, we'll continue with our very special guest this hour, the one and only Dr. Don K. Preston. His website, www.bibleprophecy.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We'll be back as we wrap up this hour from our broadcast center and studios in Niagara, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back. Don Kate Preston is our special guest this hour. www.bibleprophecy.com. Okay, Don. So we've talked about, the false prophets, the people who really do not understand the Bible because they take things literally. They don't look at it as a metaphoric way of telling stories and sharing stories, as something that we've forgotten long ago how to do. So how do we get back on track as a society?
Well, the key to this, Rob, is we're going to have to put down our iPads.
Yeah.
We're going to have to put down, our iPhones, and we're going to have to get back into the Bible and spend time and invest time in the Bible. Let's face it, most people today, I've been very, very fortunate in my preaching ministry. I've only been at 3 congregations since I started in 1975. I no longer even preach for a local congregation. I'm involved in the ministry of doing things just like I'm doing tonight. But, I very often was confronted by the fact that people wouldn't tolerate sermons over 20 or 25 minutes. And when our attention span is no longer than 20 or 25 minutes, I can tell you right now, we're not going to be good, solid students of the Bible.
Well, there's a recent survey, a study that came out, and I was talking to Craig Webb last night about it, where the attention span, whether it is on YouTube, whether it is in a dream, or whether you're listening to a lesson, is 4 minutes and 37 seconds.
Oh, so it shrank.
Yeah.
Because as of just a few years ago, the attention span was 8 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's down to 4 minutes and 37 seconds now.
Well, my wife says that I can't even say hello in 25 words or less. So for people like me,
yeah,
who have a tendency to talk, and because, what happens with me, Rob, is I don't have a regular venue every Sunday to preach. So I sit here during the week. I normally get at my office around 4 o'clock of a morning. I study hard. I research hard. I write hard. I've now written something like 31 books, working on 4 more. Wow. But, my attention span is long because I'm so engrossed in learning. One of my best friends is a PhD. He's done a tremendous amount of postdoctoral work. He has taught Hebrew and Greek on the university level. He's 85 or 86 years old. He gets up at 3 o'clock every morning and reads for 3 straight hours. And he and I talk very often about the thrill of learning. I'm not convinced that near enough people are pursuing the thrill of learning.
I can see that.
If they can't see it on a screen,
yep,
for 4 minutes now,
That's right.
then that's too long for them to pay attention. And it's frightening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's going to take to get people focused back. I mean, the sale of actual books, by all accounts, is on the decline. And again, that goes back because people have got their iPads, they've got their iPhones. My wife very commonly asks me, "What would you do without your computer these days? What would you do without your iPhone?" And I literally say, "I don't have a clue. I don't know what I would do."
Yeah.
However, if you were to see my desk
Mm-hmm.
that I'm sitting at right now, Rob, I can tell you that I can count no less than 20 books that are laying out on my main desk. On my computer desk, let me see here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books on my computer desk. Now, these are all research type of books, right? They're linguistic aids. They are critical commentaries. They are historical studies, all of that kind of stuff. And yet, when you talk to most Christians today, and you even ask them, do you have an unabridged concordance? Now, an unabridged concordance contains every single word used in the Bible and in every single place it's used in the Bible. I was teaching a Bible class on how to study the Bible several years ago, and it was obvious the class didn't have a clue on how to study the Bible. And this was before I even had my first computer, Rob. But I asked them, how many of you have a Strong's unabridged exhaustive concordance? Out of 150 people in the class, 3 of them held up their hand, and I'm going, "Oh, we got a problem, Houston."
Exactly.
Okay, we got
Yeah.
a real Bible study problem here. So I asked them, I said, how many of you know what a Strong's exhaustive concordance of the Bible is? Maybe 5 held up their hand. And over a course of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
I introduced them to how to study the Bible with these study aids, with Bible dictionaries and lexicons and, exhaustive concordances and what have you. But here's the exciting thing. Sitting here at my computer, I can log on to the internet. I can go to BibleGateway.com. I can go to BibleHub.com. I can go to GreekBible.com or any number. I'm telling you, there's so many Bible study programs on the internet that are absolutely free of charge. Some of them are a little bit complex and difficult to use. Many of them, like Bible Gateway, is extremely easy to use. You type in what verse you want to look up, and it will look up every single English translation of that verse.
Wow.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. If you want to look up a word, a term, or a phrase,
Mm-hmm.
you click on a tab. You type in the word. You can even type in, I want to search from 1 Kings to 2 Kings, and it will limit the search to those books. So what I'm saying here, this is what's exciting. While people's attention span may be reducing itself, at the same time, people can avail themselves of more study aids than ever in any time in the history of mankind.
But
on my website, I'm sorry.
You see what I see, Don, is that people have to be inspired to go and read the
Yes.
Bible. The Bible, in my opinion, Christianity, in my opinion, has not kept up with the times.
Amen.
And I think that there needs to be that resurrection of religion to bring it up to the time so that more people will be able to associate with it. It's hard for people in our society to look at the Bible and Christianity and any other religious philosophy as new when it's all based on old history.
Well, and there has been in America, in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
Around the world, an onslaught, full frontal attack against Christianity, against Christ, against the Bible, from people who ostensibly claim to be Christians. One of the commentaries that is laying on my desk right now is written by a man who's supposedly a Bible scholar.
Right.
And yet time after time after time, as I read through that book, he says this is an obvious historical error. The biblical writer was clearly wrong. And I'm going, wow, okay, so why should I trust the biblical writer on anything? And so as a result, and we've seen it in American politics, used to in America, the Bible was honored in the halls of Congress and Senate. Now, I'm not saying that they were perfect Christians, mind you, plenty of hypocrisy, but there was a high respect for Christianity, for Christians, for the Bible.
You know, speaking about that, Don, I just read tonight prior going on to air at 10 o'clock that the state of Kansas has passed a law that buildings can now put back on their building, "In God We Trust."
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's a small step.
That's right. And I think what we saw during the impeachment, as well as the prayer breakfast, is that God is coming back. God is there. He is making his presence known.
Well, I can tell you this. This is strictly an ad hominem, experiential type of story. It's an anecdote, obviously.
Wait, Don, I've got about 30 seconds.
Okay, but my ministry has literally exploded. The interest in the message that I am preaching has literally exploded. I'll leave it at that, and I'll say once again, Rob, thank you so very, very much for having me back on the program. It's always an honor. You kind of let me ramble on and go on, and for a guy like me, that's okay.
Well, because you make sense, you've got an important message, and if we can open hearts to the message and the bigger picture, Don, then that's what it's all about.
Amen to that.
Take care of yourself, my friend. God bless you, your wife, and your family, and I look forward to the next time we meet back here in the X Zone.
Amen. Same to you.
Take care, Don. That's it, X Zone Nation. I'll be back on the other side of the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue with tonight's weekend edition of the X Zone. My guest this past hour has been Dr. Don K. Preston. This is the X Zone, and wow, from UFOs, ghosts, hauntings, things that go bump in the night, the Mandela effect, to Jesus. I think when I read the Bible, I'm not afraid to say I'm a Christian guy. It is a book that is filled with mysteries. It is a book that is filled with wonder, but it's a book that is filled with the paranormal. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.